I was holding a plastic cup of cheap champagne when my boyfriend thanked another woman for building his future. Not me. Vivian Cross stood beside him beneath the gold lights of Westridge University's Founder Night stage, smiling like she had never once wondered whether a bill would clear. Her dark blonde hair fell over one shoulder in perfect waves. Her bracelet caught the light every time she lifted her glass. Around us, students, professors, donors, and hungry young founders applauded because that was what people did when a pretty girl with an old family name stood next to a promising man. Mason Reed's hand rested at the small of her back. That was the part that made the room tilt. In my first life, I had dropped my glass. In my first life, I had walked out of that ballroom with champagne on my shoes and my chest torn open, waited by the fountain until Mason called, and let him tell me it was just optics. I had let him explain that Vivian's family might invest in his student startup, that their closeness was strategic, that I was still the person he came home to when the performance ended. I had believed him because I wanted to. Then I had spent 3 years paying for that belief. Now I stood in the same ballroom, under the same lights, watching the same betrayal unfold while my fingers stayed calm around the plastic cup. Mason lifted his glass. He looked taller on stage than he did in the library at 2 in the morning, where he used to lean across my laptop and whisper, "Nora, you're the only reason I haven't quit." To Vivian, he said, bright and easy, "My partner in everything." The room clapped. Vivian looked straight at me. There was pity in her face, but it was polished, practiced pity, the kind rich girls used when they wanted to pretend cruelty was elegance. I wondered if she knew I had built the financial model behind Mason's company. I wondered if she knew I had spent spring break rewriting his investor deck while he slept with his head on my dorm pillow. I wondered if, in this life, she already understood that he did not love her any more cleanly than he had loved me. Probably not. People like Vivian Cross believed they were chosen because they were rare. People like Mason chose whoever made him feel least afraid. A voice beside me said quietly, "If your name is on any of his paperwork, you should check it tonight." I turned. A man stood near the back wall, half hidden beside one of the tall windows. He wasn't dressed like the undergraduates trying to look expensive. His suit was plain charcoal, his tie slightly loose, his hair dark and a little damp from the rain outside. He held a folder stamped with the blue logo of the Westridge Legal Aid Clinic. I knew his face, though in my first life I had met him much later. Eli Hayes. Back then, he had been the graduate law student who told me, gently and too late, that co-signing a bridge loan made me liable even if I never saw a cent of the money. He had sat across from me in a clinic office with bad coffee and kind eyes while I cried over a debt notice with Mason's company name on top and my name underneath. He had looked tired then, tired and sorry. Now he looked cautious. I almost laughed. Of course he would appear here. The universe had returned me to the worst night of my life and placed the one person who had once tried to help me near the door, holding a folder like a warning sign. "My name isn't on anything," I said. I paused. "At least, it shouldn't have been." Eli's eyes moved toward the stage, then back to me. "Good, keep it that way. Do you give that advice to all abandoned girlfriends?" His mouth tightened. Not quite a smile. "Only the one standing very still while someone else thanks their work." That should have frightened me. Instead, it steadied me. On stage, Mason was still talking. He was using the voice he saved for donors, the one that made him sound grateful and humble without actually being either. "Vivian understood the scale of the dream before anyone else did," he said. "She saw what Reedpath could become." Reedpath, even the name had been mine freshman year. Mason had wanted to call his student internship matching platform Launch Me, which sounded like a discount trampoline park. I had come up with Reedpath because his last name gave it weight and because back then, I thought loving someone meant folding your own cleverness into their future. The applause rose again. Mason leaned down and kissed Vivian's cheek. Not her mouth, he was too careful for that, but his thumb pressed into her waist like he wanted the whole room to notice possession without naming it. In my first life, that little almost kiss had destroyed me. This time, it only reminded me to breathe. My phone buzzed in my clutch. "Mason, please don't make a scene." I looked at the message for a long second. That was the first thing he said to me. Not "I'm sorry," not "let me explain," not "I know this hurts, please don't make a scene." I typed back, "I won't." Across the room, Mason glanced down at his phone. Relief crossed his face so quickly most people would have missed it. I didn't. Then I added, "You should enjoy your night." His expression changed. "Good." Vivian stepped down from the stage first. A cluster of girls from her sorority surrounded her, all silk dresses and perfume. Mason followed, pulled briefly into a handshake with Professor Marlowe from the business school. He kept looking past everyone, searching for me. I turned away before he could catch my eye. Eli was still there. "Legal Aid Clinic is open tomorrow at 9, he said. "Walk-ins are rough, But if you get there early, someone can help you look over anything you're worried about. Someone meaning you. Maybe someone better rested. You don't even know my name. Nora Bennett, he said. I stared at him, his face shifted. Your model won the undergraduate finance prize last semester. Professor Imani uses it as an example in her social impact investing class. For a moment I had the strange sensation of being visible in a life where I had spent so long making myself useful in the background. Mason had always praised me in private. He liked my mind when it belonged to him. Publicly, I became my girlfriend Nora. A phrase that sounded affectionate until I realized it had swallowed everything else. You know my model? I asked. I know good work when half the campus tries to repackage it. There was no flirtation in his voice. That was what made the warmth land harder. Before I could answer, Mason appeared beside us. Nora, he said. My name sounded wrong in his mouth, too soft, too familiar. Vivian stood a few steps behind him with two girls from her circle, watching with bright interest. She wore white, of course, the kind of white dress that dared the world to stain it. Mason looked from me to Eli. Can we talk? We are talking, I said. His eyes flickered. He wasn't used to that tone from me in our old life. I had been careful with him, even when he hurt me, especially when he hurt me. He lowered his voice. Don't do this here. Do what? Mason, Vivian said lightly. You don't have to explain a business announcement to everyone. Everyone, not her, not Nora, everyone. A few people nearby turned toward us. Their attention gathered like weather. Mason's jaw tightened. He hated being embarrassed. He hated it more than being wrong. I looked at him and remembered the hospital gray morning 3 years from now, when a collector would call me at work and ask if I was aware that Reedpath Ventures had defaulted. I remembered Mason saying, I thought Vivian's family was handling it. As if confusion could pay a debt. I remembered him asking me not to ruin his reputation when my own credit had already been ruined. Nora, he said again, softer. Please. There it was, the voice that had once undone me. I let myself feel it, not because I wanted him back, but because pretending it didn't hurt would have been another kind of lie. Then I smiled. It was small, almost polite. You made your choice on stage, I said. I accept it. Mason blinked. Vivian's smile thinned. I'm not going to chase you, I continued. I'm not going to argue about what you meant. I'm not going to fix your deck tonight or tomorrow or ever again. His face drained. That, more than losing me, frightened him. I set my untouched champagne on a passing tray. Good luck with your partner and everything. Then I walked toward the exit. The ballroom doors opened into the old marble hall. Rain blurred the courtyard windows. My reflection moved beside me. In the glass, a girl in a thrifted black dress with borrowed earrings and a spine she had not owned the first time. I heard footsteps behind me. For half a second, I thought it was Mason. It was Eli. He stopped at a respectful distance. You don't have to do anything tonight. I do, I said. I have to change every password Mason knows. That time he did smile. Start with your email. I know. And cloud storage. I know. And anywhere your signature is saved. I looked at him. You're very cheerful. I've seen what happens when people wait until Monday. A sharp ache passed through me. So had I. Outside. The rain had slowed to a mist. Students crossed the courtyard laughing under blazers and borrowed umbrellas. Behind us, music started in the ballroom, something warm and expensive, the kind of song people used to pretend a party was innocent. Eli opened the outside door, then hesitated. Do you have somewhere safe to go? My dorm. Someone there? My roommate. Good. I should have thanked him and left. Instead I asked, why did you warn me? He looked back toward the ballroom. Through the narrow window, Mason and Vivian were visible near the stage. Vivian had one hand on Mason's arm. Mason was staring at the door I had walked through. Because people sign things when they're scared of being left, Eli said. And because the person who leaves usually knows that. The words landed too close. I stepped into the wet night. By the time I reached my dorm, my phone had 17 missed calls from Mason. I did not answer any of them. June Park was sitting cross-legged on her bed, eating instant noodles from a mug and watching a baking show with the focus of a war general. She took one look at my face and muted the laptop. Who died? Me, I said. A few years ago. She stared. I kicked off my shoes, opened my laptop and began changing passwords. June set down her noodles. Okay, that is either a metaphor or we're having a much bigger night than I thought. Both. My hand shook only once. It happened when I found the folder Mason had shared with me in March. Reedpath Financing. Inside were pitch materials, projected revenue, investor notes, and one document I had not opened in this life, bridge loan draft guarantor packet. My name was in the file. Title, Nora Bennett, pending signature, not signed, not yet. A cold, clean anger moved through me. In my first life, Mason had brought that packet to me 2 weeks after founder night. He had cried, he had said. Vivian's family money was delayed because of a trust issue, that the loan was temporary, that if I believed in him, this was how I could prove it. I had signed because I thought love meant standing beside someone before the world recognized him. Now the draft sat on my screen like a ghost that had arrived early. June climbed onto my bed and looked over my shoulder. Please tell me that is not what I think it is. It's what you think it is. Did you sign? No. Are you going to? I thought of Mason's hand on Vivian's back. I thought of Vivian's pity. I thought of myself in another life, sitting on a bus with wet shoes after a 12-hour shift, staring at a debt notice and wondering how love had become a bill. No, I said. This time he can build his future without my name underneath it. My phone buzzed again. Mason, Nora, don't be dramatic. We need to talk about the model. June read it and made a sound of pure disgust. I opened the message. For a second my thumb hovered over the keyboard, then I typed, talk to Vivian, she's your partner in everything. I hit send. For the first time since waking up in my old life, I slept without dreaming of debt. The next morning, I arrived at the Westridge Legal Aid Clinic 26 minutes before it opened. The clinic sat on the first floor of the law school, tucked between a student lounge and a vending machine that only accepted exact change. It did not look like the kind of place where a person could change her future. The chairs were mismatched, the carpet had a coffee stain shaped vaguely like Florida. A printer behind the reception desk made a grinding sound every 30 seconds, as if it resented public service. Still, I felt safer there than I had in any ballroom. A woman in her 50s unlocked the front door at 9 sharp. She wore red reading glasses on a chain and carried 2 travel mugs. You must be Nora. I froze. Is that obvious? Eli emailed that a student might come in early with a financial liability concern. He did not give details. She handed me a clipboard. I'm Carla Mendoza, supervising attorney. Fill out the intake. If we have a conflict, we'll tell you before you share anything sensitive. A real procedure, a real boundary. In my first life, I had not learned to love boundaries until after I had lost everything without them. I filled in my name, student ID, contact information, and checked boxes beside consumer debt, contract review, and academic issue. When I reached the question that asked what outcome I wanted, I stopped. What did I want? Revenge sounded too childish on paper. Justice sounded too clean. I wrote, I want to make sure I am not financially or academically responsible for work and debt connected to my ex-boyfriend's startup. Carla read it, nodded once, and disappeared into the back. Eli came out 5 minutes later with his sleeves rolled to his forearms and a cup of coffee he looked too tired to enjoy. Morning, he said. You emailed ahead? I said someone might need intake, that's all. You always this careful. Occupational hazard. There was no awkward pity in him. He did not ask if I was okay, which made me like him more. Okay was too small a word for what I was. He led me into a small conference room with a scratch table and a whiteboard covered in half-erased notes about tenant deposits. Carla joined us, took the chair at the head, and explained that Eli could help with intake and document organization under supervision, but he was not my lawyer. I understand. I said, I meant it. Then I opened my laptop and showed them the folder, the bridge loan draft, the guarantor packet, the financial model, the shared drive, the version history showing my edits from March through August. Eli's face changed when he saw the pending signature page, not dramatically. He just went very still. Carla leaned closer. You have not signed this? No. Did you authorize anyone to sign electronically for you? No. Did you upload a saved signature anywhere Mason could access? My stomach tightened. Yes. Last year, for a campus housing appeal, it was in a shared folder for a while because his printer broke and we were both submitting forms. Carla made a note. First step, remove access, revoke shared permissions, and send written notice that you do not authorize use of your signature, name, credit, or work product for financing. I changed passwords last night. Good, freeze your credit today with the 3 major bureaus. It's free. Keep the PIN somewhere secure. I will. Check your credit reports. I know how. Eli glanced at me. I almost smiled. In my first life, I had learned too late. This life, I sounded prepared because my mistakes had already educated me. Carla reviewed the draft slowly. She did not gasp. She did not say Mason was evil. She explained, a draft did not create liability unless signed. A copied signature could be fraud, but proving intent required evidence. A university startup competition had separate policies for attribution, team membership, and intellectual property. If my model had been used, I needed to document authorship through version history, emails, messages, and witnesses. If I had contributed without a formal agreement, the outcome might not be perfect, but I could still protect myself from false claims going forward. The realism of it comforted me. In my first life I had wanted one sentence to fix everything. You were wronged, he owes you. You are free. Real life did not work that way. It worked through timestamps, notices, forms, hearings, and people who read footnotes while drinking cold coffee. By 10:30 Carla had helped me draft a short email. Mason, as of today, you do not have permission to use my name, signature, credit information, financial records, or identifying information in connection with ReadPath or any other financing application. You also do not have permission to present my financial model, projections, written materials, or other work as solely your own. I am preserving all records regarding my contributions. Please remove my access from any materials for which I am not responsible and confirm in writing that I am not listed as a guarantor, co-borrower, officer, employee, contractor, or team member without my express written consent. Nora Bennett. No insults, no tears, a clean line. My hand hovered over send longer than it should have. Eli noticed but did not speak. Maybe he understood that pressing send on an email could feel more final than walking out of a ballroom. I clicked Mason. Called 7 minutes later. I let it ring, then he texted Mason, are you insane? Mason, why are you making this legal? Mason, this is exactly why I didn't tell you about Vivian earlier. You overreact to everything. Mason, call me. Carla read the message's expression flat. Don't respond by text unless necessary. If you do, keep it factual. June would have said, block him and let him choke on his blazer. Carla's version was probably better in court. By noon, I had frozen my credit, downloaded my reports, and discovered one hard inquiry from 2 days earlier, Cavalier Bridge Capital. My skin went cold. Carla looked at the page. Did you apply for credit with them? No? Then dispute the inquiry and preserve the report. We'll include that in a follow-up. Eli's jaw flexed. The anger that rose in me was not hot, it was precise. Mason had not signed my name yet, but he had already tested the door. I left the clinic with a folder of printed documents and a list of steps. The campus looked painfully normal. Students sprawled on the grass with coffee. Someone tossed a frisbee near the library. The bells rang noon from the chapel tower, and for a moment I wanted to scream at everyone for living in a world where my life had just shifted. Instead, I went to the student credit union. Mrs. Alvarez, the branch manager, had helped me in my first life when my accounts were already damaged. Back then, she had slid tissues across her desk and told me shame did not pay balances. Now she looked up from her computer and smiled politely, not recognizing the girl she had not yet met. How can I help you? I need to review account authorizations, remove shared permissions, and make sure no one can access my student refund account. She blinked once, then waved me into her office. That is my favorite kind of sentence from a student. Sit down. Her office smelled like peppermint tea. A photo of 2 grown daughters sat beside her monitor. She walked me through everything: my checking account, my student refund deposit, my emergency savings, the campus debit card Mason had once borrowed too easily. Any joint accounts? She asked. No. Authorized users? Not officially. Good. Unofficial is where trouble starts, but official is where trouble sticks. I almost laughed. That should be on a poster. I've seen enough bad boyfriends to fill a training manual. She clicked through another screen. There was an external verification attempt yesterday from ReadPath Ventures. It failed because the micro deposits were never confirmed. My fingers curled around the chair arm. Can you print that? She looked at me over her glasses. I already am. By the time I got back to my dorm, Mason was waiting outside. He wore the gray coat I had found for him at a thrift shop sophomore year and tailored by hand because he had an interview and no money. Seeing it hurt in a stupid, ordinary way. Big betrayals were easier to hate. Little memories made the knife twist. Nora, he said. Standing, June, who had been walking beside me, whispered, I can start barking. Please don't. I have range. Mason looked exhausted. There were shadows under his eyes. For a second I saw the boy from freshman year who worked dish shifts and sent half his paycheck home to his mother in Ohio. The boy who had once cried in my arms after his father called him useless for choosing college over the factory. Then he opened his mouth and ruined it. You went to legal aid. Yes. What the hell is wrong with you? June stepped forward. I touched her arm, and she stopped. Don't contact lenders with my information, I said. His expression flickered. That was preliminary. That was my credit. It wasn't going to go through without you, correct? His face reddened. You know what ReadPath means to me. I know what it meant to me. He looked away. That was the first honest thing he had done. Vivian appeared at the end of the walkway, holding a cream umbrella though it was not raining. She looked out of place beside the bike racks and dorm windows, like a magazine ad pasted onto a public bulletin board. Mason, she called. We're late, June muttered. Of course she has a villain umbrella. Mason lowered his voice. Nora, please, I need the model for tomorrow's advisor meeting. You can hate me after that. There it was again, need first, apology later. I thought of all the times I had confused being needed with being loved. No, I said. He stared. No, you heard me. You built it for ReedPath. I built it with you when I was part of the team. If you want to use it, we need a written agreement acknowledging my contribution. Vivian had reached us by then. Her perfume was light and expensive. That seems a little dramatic, she said. It's a student project, Nora. Then Mason can rebuild it. Her eyes cooled. Mason ran a hand through his hair. You're punishing me. No, I'm removing myself. You think there's a difference? Yes, I said. That's why this time is going to end differently. His face changed at the words this time, but he could not know what I meant. Vivian slid her hand into the crook of his arm. Come on, Professor Marlowe doesn't like waiting. Mason let her pull him away. He looked back once in my first life. That glance would have dragged me after him. This time, I watched him go. June stood beside me until they disappeared around the corner. Okay, she said. I hate him, but that coat looked good. I laughed before I could stop myself. It came out cracked but real. That evening Mason sent one email. Nora, you are not listed as a guarantor, co-borrower, officer, or employee of ReedPath Ventures. Your name will not be used for financing without consent. Regarding the model, we disagree about ownership. I'll discuss with Professor Marlowe. Mason, it was not an apology. It was enough for now. I printed it, saved it, forwarded it to Carla, and backed it up in 3 places. Then I opened a blank document and wrote a title at the top, ClearPath, a financial decision tool for first-generation students. The idea had lived in me for years, buried under Mason's dreams. This time, I was going to build something with my own name on it. Vivian Cross invited me to her charity dinner exactly 6 days after Mason left me. The invitation came on thick ivory paper, slipped under my dorm door in an envelope that smelled faintly of lilies. June picked it up with 2 fingers like it might explode. Either this is a wedding invitation from Satan or rich people have lost email privileges, she said. I opened it. The Cross Family Student Futures Dinner, hosted by Vivian Cross, supporting access, innovation, and leadership at Westridge University. At the bottom, in Vivian's slanted handwriting, she had added, Nora, I hope you'll come. It would mean a lot to Mason if we could all be mature. June read it over my shoulder and gagged. She wants you to attend the public celebration of stealing your boyfriend and your work. She wants me to refuse, I said. Why? So she can tell people I'm bitter. June narrowed her eyes. I hate that this makes sense. I set the invitation on my desk. I'm going. No. Yes, Nora. I need to see who's funding ReedPath. You need to eat carbs and block people. I can do both. The dinner was held at the Ashford Club, a private building just beyond campus with green awnings, brass lamps, and a doorman who looked at my thrifted navy dress as if it had asked him for money. Vivian's guests arrived in black cars. Their coats disappeared into the hands of silent staff. I recognized student government officers, 2 business school professors, half the entrepreneurship board, and several donors whose names were carved onto campus buildings. Mason stood near the fireplace in a dark suit. He saw me and went pale. Vivian saw me and smiled. Nora, she said, sweeping over with both hands extended. I'm so glad you came. I let her kiss the air near my cheek. You asked. I did. Her eyes moved over my dress. That color is sweet on you. Sweet, not beautiful, not elegant. Sweet, the word people used when they wanted to pat you on the head. Thank you, I said. Your bracelet is beautiful. Her fingers touched the diamond tennis bracelet at her wrist, my grandmother's. It was not. I knew that because in my first life I had seen a photo of Vivian wearing the same bracelet in a sponsored post for a jewelry rental company, 2 years after graduation, when her family's money had vanished but her need to appear untouched had not. She leaned closer. I know this has been awkward, has it? Her smile flickered. Mason cares about you, she said. He just needs people around him who understand the level he's entering. There it was, wrapped in silk. You were useful when he was poor. I am appropriate now that he might matter. Before I could answer, Mason approached. Nora, he said, you came? Vivian invited me. He looked trapped between gratitude and dread. Can we talk later? No. His jaw tightened. Vivian laughed lightly. Mason, don't hover. Nora and I are fine. We were not fine, but Vivian had built her whole life on making other people accept words over reality. Dinner began with speeches. Vivian's father, Charles Cross, welcomed everyone. He was handsome in the tired way of men who had spent too many years convincing banks that confidence was collateral. He spoke about innovation and responsibility. He mentioned the Cross Family Foundation's historic commitment to education. Historic commitment was one of those. Phrases that sounded grand until you realized it could mean the money had been spent by dead relatives. I sat beside a woman from the alumni office and a sophomore founder who spent 20 minutes explaining blockchain to me without asking my major. Across the room, Mason and Vivian sat at the head table. Vivian rested her hand near his wineglass, close enough to signal intimacy without seeming possessive. Mason laughed when donors laughed. He looked brilliant and miserable. I hated that I could still read him. Halfway through dinner, a server approached Vivian with a discreet black folder. Vivian opened it, glanced down and stilled only for a second, then she smiled, handed over a different card, and said something too low for anyone else to hear. The server's expression did not change, but I saw Vivian's father watching from the podium. His face looked like a man hearing glass crack, a small thing, a declined card, maybe, a temporary hold, a billing error. In ordinary life it meant nothing. In this story it was the first visible thread. After dessert, guests moved to the lounge for coffee. I was standing near a marble column, pretending to study a donor plaque, when Vivian approached with 2 glasses of sparkling water. "I admire you," she said, handing one to me. That almost made me laugh. For what? Showing up. A lot of girls would hide. "I'm not a lot of girls." "No," she said, and for the first time there was something like honesty in her eyes. "You're the girl who was there before the money. Before the possible money." Her fingers tightened around her glass so she knew. "I'm not your enemy, Nora. You're wearing the dress for the role." A flush touched her cheeks. "Mason and I didn't plan to hurt you." "No, you just planned around me." She looked toward him. Mason stood with Professor Marlowe and 2 men I recognized from Cavalier Bridge Capital's website. His hands moved as he talked, tracing growth curves in the air. That was Mason at his most dangerous, hungry, charming, almost sincere. Vivian lowered her voice. "He wants to be more than where he came from." "I know. You had to know he wouldn't stay small forever." There it was again, that word, small. I thought of Mason working double shifts, Mason reading pitch books from the library because he could not buy them, Mason pressing his forehead to mine after his first competition loss and whispering, "Don't let me become my father." I had wanted him to grow. I had never wanted him to become cruel just to prove he had. I didn't want him small. I said, I wanted him honest. Vivian looked away first. A laugh rose behind us. One of her friends, Paige, drifted over with a phone in hand. "Nora, right?" Paige said. "Vivian told us you helped Mason with spreadsheets. That's so generous. I can barely open Excel without crying." Vivian's face stayed smooth. There it was, the public cut, not ex-girlfriend, not co-founder, not financial architect, spreadsheet girl. The old Nora would have burned with shame. This Nora smiled. "Spreadsheets are useful. They tell you when people can't afford the lives they're presenting." Silence landed hard. Paige blinked. Vivian's eyes sharpened. Before either of them could speak, a man behind us coughed softly. Eli Hayes stood near the doorway with a tray of name tags in one hand. He wore a staff badge for the Legal Clinic's donor outreach program. His gaze moved from Vivian to me. "Ms. Cross," he said politely. "Your father asked for you." Vivian did not like being interrupted. She liked it less when the interruption saved someone else. "Of course," she said. She walked away with Paige trailing behind her. I exhaled. Eli stepped closer, still leaving space. "You enjoy dangerous sentences." "She called me spreadsheet girl." "She outsourced it." "That's worse." "It usually is." I looked at his badge. "You work every event." "Law school is expensive." "Isn't everything?" Something moved in his expression, but he only said, "Are you okay?" "No." He nodded, accepting the answer without trying to repair it. That was another thing I liked about him. Mason always needed my pain to become manageable quickly because my pain made him feel guilty. Eli let it exist in the room. A raised voice cut through the lounge. Charles Cross stood near a side hallway, phone pressed to his ear. He had turned away from the guests, but not far enough. "I told Sterling we need 30 more days, he said. "No, not a restructuring, a timing issue." Eli looked toward him. I did too. Vivian appeared at her father's side and touched his arm. He ended the call too quickly. "Timing issue, trust issue, temporary delay." The same phrases Mason had used in my first life before asking me to co-sign. My stomach tightened. Eli's voice was low. "Don't build a case out of one overheard call." "I'm not." "Good. I'm building a question." "That's healthier." "Is it?" "No," he said. "But it's harder to object to." I laughed quietly. Across the room, Mason saw us. His face darkened. For a moment, jealousy replaced panic, and I saw the boy. He still was beneath the suit he had left me, but he had not imagined me standing beside someone else calmly. He had wanted me heartbroken enough to remain available. He crossed the room too fast. Nora, he said. Can you not do this? Eli's posture shifted, but he did not speak. Do what? I asked. Come here and make Vivian uncomfortable, talk to random guys, throw little comments around like you're better than everyone. I stared at him. There had been a time when Mason's disapproval could make me shrink, now it only clarified things. Mason, I said. You invited investors to a dinner funded by a family whose card may have just been declined, while using a model you didn't build and a lender that already ran my credit without permission. I'm not the uncomfortable part of this room. His face went white. Eli looked at me sharply. Maybe because I had said too much, maybe because I had said exactly enough. Vivian returned before Mason could answer. What's going on? She asked. Nothing, Mason said quickly, but nothing was over. That night, June and I sat on the dorm floor with popcorn between us while I wrote down everything I had seen. The declined card, Charles's call, the Cavalier investors, Paige's comment, Mason's reaction. June read my notes upside down. Vivian Cross is broke. Maybe. Mason left you for a rich girl who might be broke. Maybe. June leaned back against my bed and stared at the ceiling. That's not revenge, she said. That's math with perfume. I opened my laptop and checked the version history on my ReadPath model again. Every tab still showed my initials, every formula had a timestamp, every assumption Mason was presenting as his genius had been built by the girl he thought would be too hurt to protect herself. For the first time, I saw the shape of the year ahead. I did not have to push Mason and Vivian into anything, they were already walking. All I had to do was stop standing underneath them when the floor gave way. Professor Elaine Marlowe did not believe in emotional context, she believed in documentation, deadlines, and shoes that clicked like punctuation marks on tile floors. She had a silver bob, narrow glasses, and the kind of office where books were not decoration. I had admired her since sophomore year, partly because she terrified men who thought confidence counted as preparation. Unfortunately, that morning, I was one of the students she thought might be wasting her time. Ms. Bennett, she said, folding her hands on the desk. I understand there has been a personal rupture between you and Mr. Reed. A personal rupture. Mason announcing Vivian as his partner in front of half the university sounded almost elegant when she put it that way. There has, I said. But that's not why I'm here. Her eyes moved to the folder in my lap. Most students believe that. I know. That got her attention. I opened the folder and laid out my documents one by one. Dated exports of the financial model. Emails from Mason asking me to fix the churn assumptions. Text messages about investor decks. The original ReadPath name brainstorm, my withdrawal notice, Mason's written confirmation that I was not part of financing. Professor Marlowe watched without expression. I'm not asking the university to punish him for breaking up with me, I said. I'm asking for my contribution to be acknowledged before ReadPath advances in the venture competition. She picked up the model printout. You understand that informal collaboration is common in student ventures. Yes. You also understand that being helpful does not always create ownership. Yes. And if Mr. Reed argues that you contributed as a romantic partner, not a team member, I hated how neatly she said it. I'll argue that the work speaks through the record. He sent me investor deadlines. He asked for revisions. He used my projections in submissions. Whether he loved me while doing that seems irrelevant. For the first time, Professor Marlowe's mouth almost moved. Not a smile, more like approval trying not to show itself. She set down the printout. What outcome are you seeking? Authorship acknowledgement for the financial model and written confirmation that ReadPath cannot represent those materials as solely Mason's work. If they want to continue without me, they need to rebuild the model or license mine under terms we agreed to. That is more specific than I expected. I've had a strange week. I can imagine. No, I thought, you can't, but she did not need to. Professor Marlowe explained the process first, an informal review by the venture program, then a meeting with Mason and any listed team members. If unresolved, it could go to the Academic Integrity Board because the competition required original work and accurate attribution. The university would not decide complex intellectual property ownership like a court, but it could determine whether ReadPath had violated competition rules. Do not contact judges directly, she said. I won't. Do not post about this online. I won't. Do not threaten Mr. Reed. I won't. She paused. You seem offended that I said that. I'm offended that it's necessary. It is always necessary. Fair. When I left her office, Mason was waiting in the hallway. Of course he was. He stood beside a framed photo of last year's competition winners. hands shoved in his pockets. Vivian was not with him. Without her, he looked younger and more tired. She emailed me. He said, Professor Marlowe. Who else? The list of people you disappoint is growing. His eyes flashed. You think this is funny? No? You're trying to take Reedpath from me. I'm trying to take my work out of your mouth. He flinched. Good then. Annoyingly, I saw tears in his eyes, not enough to fall. Mason had too much pride for that, but enough to remind me that pain did not only belong to the betrayed. My dad called last night, he said. The plant cut his hours again. My hand tightened around the folder. I knew this story. Mason's father, Alan Reed, had spent 30 years at an auto parts plant outside Dayton. He had a bad back, a worse temper, and a habit of making Mason feel responsible for every bill he could not pay. In our first life, Mason had used those calls like weather reports for his desperation. I'm sorry, I said. He looked startled. I meant it. That was the problem with real hurt. It could sit beside anger without canceling it. If Reedpath hits, he said, voice low, I can help them. My mom can stop picking up extra shifts at the pharmacy. My sister can transfer out of community college. Do you understand that? Yes. Then why are you doing this? Because your family's fear doesn't give you a right to erase me. He looked down. For 1 second I thought he might understand, then his face hardened in the familiar way, shame turning into blame because blame was easier to carry. You loved being needed, he said. Don't pretend I forced you to help. You wanted to be the reason I made it. The words hit because they were not entirely false. I had wanted to matter. I had wanted to be indispensable. Sometimes I had wrapped sacrifice around Mason like a ribbon and called it love. That did not excuse him, but it made the memory harder to hold. You're right, I said. That stopped him. I did like being needed. I liked it too much, but you liked needing me as long as nobody important had to know. He looked away again. Vivian appeared at the end of the hallway, heels sharp on the floor. Mason, the advisor meeting started 5 minutes ago. Her eyes moved to me. Still filing complaints? Still using other people's work? She smiled, but her face had gone pale. Mason stepped between us. Enough. Vivian touched his sleeve. Let's go. As they walked away, I saw her whisper something to him. He shook his head. She whispered again, harder. The first crack between them, it should have made me happy. It didn't. Not exactly. It made me feel like I was watching a fire from a distance. Knowing I had once slept in that house. The informal review happened 2 days later. Mason brought Vivian, though she had not been part of Reedpath until recently. He also brought a revised deck where my model had been flattened into screenshots and the formulas hidden. That was a mistake, Professor Marlowe noticed immediately. Why are these cells locked? She asked. Mason cleared his throat. We simplified for presentation. Who is we? Vivian and I. Vivian smiled. I helped with market positioning. Professor Marlowe looked at her. Did you build the revenue model? No, but I reviewed it. Did you alter the churn assumptions? Vivian's smile tightened. Mason handled the technical side. Professor Marlowe turned to Mason. Did Ms. Bennett build the original version of the model? Mason's throat moved. The room was silent. I could hear the air conditioner ticking. She helped, he said finally. There it was, the smallest possible truth. Professor Marlowe looked at me. Ms. Bennett. I slid forward a printed email from April. Mason had written, Nora, your model is the only reason this thing looks investable. Can you fix CAC before Monday? Professor Marlowe read it. Mason stared at the table. Vivian did not look at him. She looked at me. And for the first time the pity was gone. In its place was calculation. After the meeting, the venture program placed Reedpath's advancement on provisional hold pending attribution review. It was not a final victory, but Mason came out of the building like he had been slapped. Vivian followed, phone already in hand. This is manageable, she said. My father knows people on the board. Mason rounded on her. This is not about who your father knows. Her face changed. Excuse me. He lowered his voice when he saw me nearby. Nothing. No, Vivian said, wounded pride sharpening every word. Say it. Mason didn't. That was one of his talents, swallowing the truth until it poisoned someone else. Eli was waiting near the clinic entrance when I crossed the quad, carrying a stack of tenant rights flyers. He glanced at my face. Provisional hold. He asked, how did you know? That's the face of someone who won a procedural step and wants it to feel better than it does. I sighed. You're irritating. I've been told. We walked toward the student union together. The maples along the path had started turning red at the tips. Westridge was beautiful in the fall. In the unfair way expensive campuses often were, stone buildings, clean lawns, windows glowing warmly while students inside learned how to name systems that would still crush people who lacked access to them. Professor Marlowe believed the documents, I said. That's good. She also made it clear I might not get ownership. That's realistic. I hate realistic. Most people do until they need it. I looked at him. Do you always sound like a clinic brochure? Only before lunch. A laugh escaped me. It felt dangerous laughing with him, not because he had done anything wrong, but because some part of me was still wired to feel guilty for warmth that did not belong. To Mason, Eli seemed to sense the shift. He slowed near the union doors. You don't owe anyone misery as proof that you cared, he said. My throat tightened. I don't know how to stop. I know. The doors opened and a group of law students spilled out, talking about exams. Eli stepped aside to let them pass. One of them glanced at him. Hayes, you coming to the fellowship thing Friday? Hayes, I knew his last name of course, but hearing it in that casual, familiar way made something in my memory stir. Hayes Foundation, Hayes Hall, Hayes Venture Prize. I looked at Eli. He was watching the students leave, expression unreadable. In my first life I had been too buried in debt notices to care who his family was. In this life I was paying attention. He turned back to me. What? Nothing, I said, but it was not nothing. It was another thread, and I had learned to follow threads before they became ropes around my neck. By October I became the girl people lowered their voices around. It happened gradually. A pause when I entered the dining hall, a glance exchanged over coffee, an invitation that did not come. Someone from Mason's entrepreneurship circle unfollowed me. Then 3 more did, as if cowardice were contagious. Vivian did not need to tell people I was jealous. She only had to sigh in the right rooms. Mason did not need to call me vindictive. He only had to look sad when my name came up. Between the two of them, they built a version of me that was easy to dismiss. Bitter scholarship girl tries to sabotage ex-boyfriend's success after he upgrades to heiress girlfriend. June wanted to start a counter-campaign. I can make a slideshow, she said one night, sitting at her desk with a face mask on and rage in her eyes. Title slide: Men who steal Excel sheets and the women who accessorize them. No. I'll use tasteful fonts. No. I won't tag the dean. June, she spun in her chair. Fine, but I hate watching them make you small. I looked up from my laptop. ClearPath's prototype stared back at me, unfinished but mine. I had spent 3 weeks building a tool that helped students compare loan offers, understand personal guarantees, and see what monthly payments actually looked like after graduation. It was not flashy like ReadPath. No one would stand on a stage and call it the future of work, but every time I entered a formula, I felt a little less like the girl who had signed herself into disaster. They're not making me small, I said. They're making me quiet. That's not better. No, but quiet can work. June peeled off her face mask. That sounded ominous. I approve. The next day I met Mrs. Alvarez at the credit union again. She had agreed to review the plain language financial explanations in ClearPath. As long as I understood she could not endorse a student product officially. I'm not asking for endorsement, I said, just accuracy. She adjusted her glasses and read through the screen. Good, you explain interest. Capitalization without making people want to fake their death. That was the goal. This section on personal guarantees needs more fear. More fear. Healthy fear. She tapped the desk. Students see guarantee and think it means confidence. It means if the borrower cannot pay, the lender can come for you. I knew she must have seen something in my face because her voice softened. My younger daughter signed for a boyfriend's car when she was 21. Mrs. Alvarez said. He missed payments. She learned faster than he did. What happened? She paid. He apologized. Neither fixed her credit overnight. There was no drama in the way she said it that made it worse. Did she forgive him? She forgave herself first, him later, from far away. I wrote that down after I left, not for ClearPath, for me. That afternoon I found an envelope in my campus mailbox. Hayes Foundation Undergraduate Resilience Scholarship, Annual Renewal Notice. I stared at the return address. The Hayes Foundation had funded part of my scholarship since freshman year. I knew that in the abstract, everyone knew the Hayeses had money woven through Westridge, Hayes Hall, Hayes Innovation Prize, Hayes Public Service Fellowship. Their name appeared on plaques so often it became part of the architecture. But I had not connected that name to Eli, maybe because he did not act like a plaque, maybe because I had not wanted another complication. I carried the envelope to the library, sat in my usual corner, and searched Eli Hayes Westridge. The results appeared immediately. Elias Hayes, J.D. candidate, Westridge Law, former research assistant, Consumer Protection Clinic, son of Miriam Hayes, chair of Hayes Family Foundation, grandson of Richard Hayes, founder of Hayes Capital. There was a photo from a foundation gala 2 years earlier. Eli stood beside a woman in silver silk, looking uncomfortable in a tuxedo, younger, cleaner shaven, clearly born into the kind of rooms where people like Vivian learned. To smile, I closed the laptop. A strange, cold feeling moved through me, not betrayal, not yet, but something near it. Eli had warned me about Mason, helped me organize documents, walked me through legal realities. He had also failed to mention that his family's foundation funded the venture prize Mason wanted, the scholarship that kept me at Westridge, and half the buildings where my life was currently burning. That evening, I went to the clinic. Eli was outside, taping a notice to the door about walk-in hours. He turned when he heard me. Nora, are you a Hayes? He went still. The pause was answer enough. I held up the scholarship envelope. As in Hayes Foundation? Yes. The word was quiet. You didn't think that was relevant. I should have told you earlier. That was not the same as no. When, he exhaled, when I realized ReedPath was connected to the venture competition, maybe before. Why didn't you? Because I don't sit on the foundation board. I don't make scholarship decisions. I don't judge the venture prize at the clinic. I'm a law student under supervision. Not a donor's son. That sounds rehearsed. It is. I've had to say versions of it my whole life. I looked at him. He looked tired again, but not in the same way Mason did. Mason's exhaustion demanded comfort. Eli seemed to expect consequences. You knew who Vivian was, I said. Yes. You knew the Cross family had financial problems. I knew there were rumors. From your family. From rooms I didn't want to be in. And you warned me because I saw Mason put his hand on her back. And your face go empty because I saw a lender representative in the room, because I've watched people with family money use people without it as insulation. The answer was too good. I hated that. Were you protecting me or protecting the foundation? His face tightened. You? I wanted to believe him. That frightened me more than doubt. A student came down the hall toward the clinic, saw us, and wisely turned around. Eli lowered his voice. I'm sorry. I should have given you the information and let you decide what to do with it. Yes, you should have. You're right. I did not know what to do with an apology that did not argue back. Mason always fought for a smaller version of guilt. Eli let the full weight sit on the table between us. I need space, I said. He nodded. I mean it. I know. I turned to leave, then stopped. Don't help me with anything connected to the competition. I already spoke with Carla this afternoon. I'm off any clinic intake involving you. If ReedPath or the Hayes Foundation becomes central, she'll assign another student. My throat tightened. He had done the correct thing before I demanded it. That did not erase the omission. It did make anger harder to enjoy. Good, I said. For 2 weeks, I did not speak to him except when necessary. During those 2 weeks, ReedPath's provisional hold remained. Mason rebuilt parts of the model badly. Vivian's social circle worked overtime. Professor Marlowe requested more documentation. ClearPath grew from a spreadsheet into a rough interface with ugly buttons and useful bones, and Eli left me alone. That was how I learned his apology had not been a performance. He did not send long texts explaining himself. He did not corner me after class. He did not ask June how I was doing, which June reported with grudging respect. He has restraint, she said. Annoying, harder to mock. Try. I am trying. At the end of October, the venture program sent its decision. ReedPath could remain in the competition. Only if Mason submitted a rebuilt financial model or entered into a written attribution agreement with me. The prior model could not be represented as solely his work. I read the email 3 times. It was not everything. It was enough to make Mason call me within 30 seconds. I declined. Then Vivian texted, Vivian, this is getting embarrassing for everyone. Mason is willing to offer a small acknowledgement in the appendix. I stared at the message, small acknowledgement in the appendix. I typed no. She responded almost instantly, Vivian, you are making a mistake. For once, I did not answer. That night, Mason stood outside my dorm again. June saw him through the window and groaned. Does he not have classes? A hobby? Shame. I went downstairs because some conversations were better witnessed by security cameras. Mason looked thinner. He had a folder under one arm and rain in his hair. I'll acknowledge you, he said without greeting. In the appendix, maybe in the technical notes. No, Nora, my work is not a footnote to your ambition. His face twisted. You think Vivian doesn't pressure me. You think her father isn't asking where the updated numbers are. You think I'm sleeping. That sounds hard. He stared. I meant it again. That was the unbearable part. You can still do the right thing, I said. His laugh was sharp. The right thing doesn't pay my parents' mortgage. No, but the wrong thing may cost more. He looked toward the street where Vivian's car waited at the curb. I could see her silhouette in the back seat, lit by her phone. She can get me in rooms you can't, he said. I know. Then you understand. I understand why you chose her, I said. I don't understand why you thought I'd keep paying for the choice. His eyes filled again, this time one tear slipped down before he wiped it away angrily. For a second I saw his fear naked, then he put it back behind pride. Fine, he said. Build your little student loan calculator, see where that gets you. He walked away. The words should have wounded me, instead, they became fuel. I went upstairs, opened ClearPath, and worked until dawn. The bridge loan appeared in Mason's life the way most traps do. Dressed as a solution, Cavalier Bridge Capital occupied the 9th floor of a glass building downtown, with a lobby that smelled like leather and citrus and a receptionist who smiled without showing teeth. I knew this because Mason sent me the address by mistake, at least. I thought it was a mistake. His text arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. Mason meeting moved to 4. Bring any final questions about guarantee language. Then 3 seconds later, Mason, sorry, wrong person. I stared at the screen. June, who was lying upside down on my bed reading a film theory article, looked over. That man either has the survival instincts of a paper bag or he wants you to ask. He wants me to ask, are you going to? No. Growth looks good on you. But I did not delete the message. I saved it because growth did not require stupidity. By then, ReadPath had missed 2 internal venture deadlines. Mason's rebuilt model lacked the sophistication of mine, and everyone knew it. Vivian's father had stopped attending public campus events. The Cross Family Foundation quietly postponed its annual grant announcement. Vivian still wore perfect clothes, but I had started noticing repeats disguised with different jewelry. The rich campus queen was still queen. The castle just sounded hollow when tapped. I should have been satisfied. Instead, I kept thinking of Mason standing in the rain, saying the right thing doesn't pay my parents' mortgage. That was the part nobody wanted in revenge stories. The person who hurt you could still have real reasons for being desperate. Their pain did not absolve them, but it made the pleasure of watching them fall less simple. A week after the mistaken text, Professor Marlowe asked me to stop by. Her office window overlooked the quad. Students moved below in scarves and boots, bright dots against gray stone. Ms. Bennett, she said. Mr. Reed submitted a rebuilt financial model. I assumed he would. It is weaker. I said nothing. I am not telling you that to flatter you. I am telling you because ReadPath is still being considered if the team can demonstrate independent work going forward. I understand. She studied me. Do you? Yes. The university isn't here to avenge me. No, it is not. I'm building my own project. I heard. Of course she had. Professor Marlowe heard everything eventually. I also heard, she continued, that your project explains financing risk to first-generation students. It tries to submit it to the social impact track. I blinked. That track closed last week. I can approve a late submission if there is good cause. You were involved in an authorship review that affected your timeline. For a moment I could not speak. In my first life, Professor Marlowe had been one of the people I avoided after everything collapsed. I had believed she would see only a foolish girl who signed what she did not understand. Maybe she would have. Maybe I had denied her the chance to surprise me. Thank you, I said. Do not thank me. Submit a complete application. That was Professor Marlowe's version of kindness. I submitted ClearPath 3 days later. At the same time, Mason and Vivian signed the Cavalier loan. I learned this from Mason himself. He cornered me outside the library near dusk, breathless and bright-eyed in a way I remembered too well. That look used to mean a breakthrough. Now it meant a cliff. We got funding, he said. I adjusted the strap of my bag. Congratulations. His smile faltered. That's it. What do you want me to say? I don't know. Maybe admit you were wrong to act like I couldn't do this without you. Did Vivian's family invest? His mouth tightened. Cavalier did. On what terms? That's none of your business. You're right. He seemed thrown by that. In our old life, I would have argued. I would have begged to see the documents. I would have tried to protect him from every sharp edge, then resented him for bleeding on me. This time, I let silence do the work. Mason looked toward the library steps, where students hurried past with coffee and laptops. His voice dropped. It's short-term. Once we win the prize, once Cross comes in, we refinance. I had heard the exact sentence before. Different hallway, same illusion. Is your name on the guarantee? I asked. He looked back at me sharply. There was my answer. And Vivian's. His jaw tightened. We believe in the company. I almost closed my eyes. Belief was not a payment plan. Mason, I said carefully, make sure an independent lawyer reads whatever you signed. He laughed, but there was fear under it. Now you care. I never stopped caring. I stopped volunteering to be collateral. The laugh died for a second. He looked like he might say something human. Then Vivian called from a black sedan at the curb. Mason? He straightened. The mask returned. Good luck with ClearPath, he said. Maybe you can teach people how to be afraid of everything. No, I said, just how to read. He walked away. The sedan door closed behind him. I stood there until the car disappeared. Later that night, I opened the old folder from my first life. I had recreated parts of it from memory, debt letters, dates, names, amounts, not because I could use them as evidence. No one would believe a document from a future that had not happened, but memory had its own ledger. Cavalier Bridge. Capital promissory note $185,000, origination fee $9,250, default interest 18%, personal guarantors Mason Reed, Nora Bennett, expected repayment source Hayes Venture Prize / Cross Family Investment. This life, my name was not there. Mason's was, Vivian's likely was too. I should have slept well. I didn't. At 2 a.m, I walked to the common room and found June making tea. She looked at me, then filled a second mug. You're doing that thing, she said. What thing? Feeling guilty because people who harmed you are about to meet consequences they personally signed for. I wrapped both hands around the mug. He wasn't always like this, I know. He was kind to me once, I know. He's scared. June sat beside me. So are you. The simple truth of it made my eyes burn. I was scared of becoming cruel, scared that enjoying my escape meant I had turned into someone ugly, scared that if Mason fell, some old loyal part of me would still reach out. June leaned her shoulder against mine. You can feel sorry for someone and still not climb into the hole with them, she said. I laughed softly. When did you get wise? I've been wise. You've been busy dating a cautionary tale. The next week, ClearPath was accepted into the social impact track. I found out through an email at 7:12 a.m. and screamed into my pillow so loudly that June fell out of bed. By 9, I was in Professor Marlowe's office signing forms. By 10, I was assigned a mentor from the Public Service Entrepreneurship program. By noon, I was standing outside the law school because some foolish part of me wanted to tell Eli I did not go in. Space meant space. Even when the person you missed was the person who had taught you the word boundary by honoring one. As I turned away, the clinic door opened. Eli stepped out with a box of files. We both stopped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, You got in. How do you know? Professor Marlowe emailed the clinic asking if we could provide general educational resources for your project. Carla told me because I'm no longer on your case, but I'm still allowed to be glad for you. The carefulness of that sentence almost hurt. I got in, I said. His face softened, not dramatically, not like Mason, who performed emotion as if an audience might grade it. Eli's happiness was quiet and immediate, and it made me want things I was not ready to want. That's really good, Nora. Thank you. The wind lifted leaves across the law school steps. For a second, the whole campus seemed suspended between seasons. I'm still angry, I said. I know. I don't know if I trust you. I know that too. He shifted the box in his arms. For what it's worth, I'm not going anywhere near competition decisions. I also told my mother I won't discuss you read path or any student matter with her. Did she ask? She asked why I looked like someone had finally told me no. I almost smiled. He saw it and wisely did not push. I should go. I said, yeah, but I did not move immediately, neither did he. That was how the romance began, I think, not with a kiss, not with a rescue, with two people standing on cold steps, wanting to step closer and choosing for the moment not to. It felt slow, it felt honest. I was learning to prefer those. ClearPath's first demo crashed in front of 12 people in a projector, not gracefully. One moment, I was explaining how a student could compare a federal loan, a private loan, and a family co-signed credit line. The next, the screen froze on a giant red error message that said invalid input in letters large enough to be seen from space. The room went silent. Then Mrs. Alvarez, who had come as my unofficial accuracy reader, leaned toward Professor Marlowe and whispered loudly, At least the warning is clear. People laughed. So did I. 6 months earlier, failure in public would have destroyed me. I would have imagined Mason hearing about it, Vivian smirking, the whole campus confirming I was not brilliant without him. But standing there with my broken prototype and my own name on the title slide, I felt embarrassed, not erased. There was a difference. I'll fix that, I said, clicking back to the presentation. But honestly, if a loan calculator screaming invalid input saves one person from signing a bad guarantee, I may keep it. More laughter, warmer this time. After the demo, Professor Marlowe gave me a list of improvements so long it looked like a legal complaint. Mrs. Alvarez gave me a granola bar and said, Eat. Financial literacy is not enhanced by fainting. June recorded the whole crash and promised to delete it, which meant she was absolutely saving it for my future wedding slideshow. The only person I wanted to tell and did not tell was Eli. I was getting better at not turning every feeling into action. Mason, unfortunately, had no such discipline. He approached me outside the student union 2 days later, carrying 2 coffees. My old order was in his left hand. I looked at it. He noticed. You still like oat milk. I still dislike emotional ambushes. He winced. Fair. That surprised me enough that I stayed. He offered the cup. I did not take it. He lowered it slowly. I heard your demo went well, he said. It crashed. Yeah, but people liked you. There was something raw in his voice. People liked you, not the project, not the work. Mason had always wanted admiration, but he feared being truly known. He wanted applause to drown out the voice in his head that sounded like his father. I had mistaken that hunger for vision. How's Reed Path? I asked. He looked away. Fine. Mason. He laughed without humor. You don't get to use that voice anymore. What voice? The one that makes me want to tell the truth. The words landed between us. For once, neither of us stepped around them. He sat on the low stone wall near the Union. After a moment I sat too, leaving space. Cavalier wants monthly reporting, he said. Vivian said her father's team would help. Her father's team is one guy named Dennis who never replies before midnight. That sounds stressful. It is. Did a lawyer review the loan? His silence answered, Mason. Don't. Okay. He rubbed both hands over his face. You know what's messed up? Vivian isn't stupid. She understands people, rooms, money signals. She can make donors feel like they discovered you. But when I ask about actual cash, actual terms, she gets offended like numbers are rude. I thought of Vivian telling me Mason needed people who understood the level he was entering. Maybe Vivian understood levels. Maybe she had never had to understand floors collapsing. Why are you telling me this? I asked. He looked at the coffee in his hand. Because you would have known what to do. There it was, not I miss you, not I'm sorry you were useful. The old wound opened, but it did not bleed the same way. I did know, I said. That's why I didn't sign. He nodded slowly. For a second I thought we had reached some sad little island of truth. Then he said, come back as an advisor. I closed my eyes. Nora, just for 3 months. We'll pay you after funding. I'll put you in the appendix, the technical. I stood. He stood too. Wait. No. You didn't even let me finish. You finished the moment you said after funding. His face flushed. You know I don't have cash right now. I know. Then what am I supposed to do? Build something you can afford. He stared at me as if I had slapped him. Maybe I had, in the only language he still understood. I walked away before pity weakened me. That night Vivian came to my dorm. Not Mason. Vivian. June opened the door, looked her up and down and said, absolutely not. Vivian blinked. Excuse me. Nope. I stepped behind June. It's okay. It is not okay. This hallway has suffered enough. Vivian's face was pale under perfect makeup. I need 5 minutes. June looked at me. I nodded. She moved aside but stayed close enough to be uncomfortably present. Vivian entered our room like someone trying not to react to cheap furniture. Her eyes moved over the twin beds, the thrifted rug, the stack of textbooks on my desk. For a moment, I wondered if she had ever been inside a dorm that did not belong to another rich girl. I want to buy your model, she said. No greeting, no apology. At least she was efficient. It's not for sale. Everything is for sale. That sentence explains a lot about you. Her mouth tightened. $20,000. June made a choking sound. I stared at Vivian. $20,000 would pay my remaining meal plan balance, my winter books, my mother's overdue dental bill, and the emergency fund I had been trying to rebuild $10 at a time. Vivian knew that. Of course she knew that. Mason would have told her enough. No, I said. Vivian's eyes flickered. 30, June whispered. I hate that I have student loans. No, I said again. Vivian stepped closer. Do you understand what Mason is trying to build? Yes, better than you. Her face hardened. You think you're noble because you're poor. No, I think I'm careful. Because I've been poor. For the first time her expression cracked. It was small, but I saw it. Not anger, not contempt, fear. My father has people expecting this, she said. Mason has people expecting this. Do you think walking away from expectations makes you free? It just means someone else pays. I studied her. There was a person under the polish, not a kind person, maybe not even a brave one, but a person whose life had taught her that appearances were not vanity. They were armor. They were currency, maybe survival. Vivian, I said. Who pays if Reedpath fails? Her eyes sharpened. It won't. Who pays? Mason and I signed because we believe in it. There it was, confirmation. June went very still. I felt the past shift under my feet. Mason and Vivian, not me. The story had changed. Vivian lifted her chin. You can either take money now or watch from the outside while we win without you. I thought of $30,000. I thought of my old debt. I thought of the girl I had been desperate to be chosen, and the woman I might become if I learned that every insult had a price tag. No, I said. Vivian's face closed. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said. But at least the regret will belong to me. After she left, June shut the door and leaned against it. $30,000, she said faintly. I know. You are either incredibly principled or concussed. Both are possible. She crossed the room and hugged me hard. I let her. The next morning I found a new folder shared to my student email from an anonymous account, clearpath_final_model XLSX. My stomach dropped. I opened it on an isolated campus computer, not my laptop. The file contained pieces of my current ClearPath formulas mixed with old ReadPath assumptions. Someone had tried to make it look as if I had built ClearPath by stealing from Mason's company. It was clumsy. It was also dangerous. I did not panic. I took screenshots. I preserved headers. I forwarded everything to Carla Mendoza and Professor Marlowe. Then I did something the old Nora would never have done. I filed a formal report before anyone else could file one against me. By noon, Professor Marlowe replied, "Do not discuss this with Mr. Reed or Ms. Cross. Preserve all records. We will convene a review at 1. Mason texted, "Mason, what did you do?" I stared at the message. Then I deleted it without answering. Quiet, I was learning, did not mean passive. Sometimes quiet was the sound evidence made while gathering weight. Eli found me in the library basement, surrounded by printouts and vending machine. Coffee. He stopped at the end of the table like he had reached an invisible line. "You don't have to talk to me," he said. "I know. Carla asked me to bring these to Professor Marlowe. I saw your name on the meeting schedule, not the case file." He lifted a sealed envelope. Every word was careful. I hated that I appreciated it. "You can sit," I said. He did, leaving one chair between us. The basement was nearly empty. Rain tapped against the narrow windows at ground level. Somewhere in the stacks, the heating system clanked like an old ship. For a while we said nothing, then I slid one of the printouts toward him. "Someone tried to frame ClearPath as stolen work?" He glanced at the first page but did not touch it. "I shouldn't review evidence." "I know, I just wanted to say the sentence out loud to someone who won't tell me I'm overreacting." His face softened. "You're not overreacting." The relief was embarrassing. I leaned back and pressed my fingers to my eyes. "I keep thinking I'm prepared, because I know the broad strokes, but then something changes and I feel like I'm standing in traffic." Eli was quiet for a moment. "You know outcomes," he said. "That's not the same as control." My hand lowered. I had never told him the full truth. Not the impossible part. Not the first life, the debt notices, the night shift, the bus accident on an icy road after a double shift that ended with headlights and the taste of blood in my mouth. Not waking up back at Founder Night with Mason on stage. And Vivian smiling under gold lights. I could not tell him that, not yet, maybe not ever. "You sound like you've had practice with not controlling things," I said, his mouth curved without humor. "Family money is mostly people pretending control is a virtue instead of a drug." I looked at him. He stared at the rain-blurred window. "My grandfather built Hayes Capital buying distressed companies," he said. "He called it saving jobs. Sometimes it was just buying other people's panic at a discount. My mother built the foundation because she wanted the name to mean something gentler." "And you?" "I went to law school because I got tired of rooms where everyone talked about access without inviting anyone who needed it." It was the most he had said about himself. I wanted to step into that honesty. Then the envelope on the table reminded me why I had stepped back. "Why didn't you tell me who you were?" I asked. He nodded once, like he had expected the question to return until answered properly. "Because I liked being useful without being a Hayes." That was not the answer I expected. He continued. "People hear the name and decide things. Some want money, some resent it, some perform gratitude, some perform indifference. At the clinic, I could be competent or not on ordinary terms. With you, I wanted that too. You wanted me not to know." "Yes. At my expense." His eyes met mine. "Yes." The plain admission hurt less than any defense would have. "I'm sorry," he said. "Not because you found out, because I took away information you should have had." I looked at the printouts. Mason took my work and called it his. Vivian took my poverty and tried to price it. Eli took information and called it privacy. Different injuries, different weights, but all of them asked me to live inside someone else's version of what I needed to know. "I don't want to be managed," I said. "I know." "No, I need you to really know that I have spent years." I stopped. He waited. I swallowed. "I have spent too long being useful to people who made decisions around me. If you want to be in my life, even as a friend, you don't get to decide what truth I can handle." His face changed when I said in my life, "Not much enough." "You're right," he said again. No argument outside. The rain thickened. I should have ended the conversation there. Instead I asked, "Did your family ever consider investing in Cross?" Eli's shoulders tensed. "Not officially through the foundation." Hayes Capital looked at a Cross real estate note last year and passed. "Why?" "I only heard pieces." "Eli." He looked down at his hands. "Liquidity problems, too much debt against properties that were valued generously, a private bank relationship under stress." Nothing I can document for you and nothing you should use. Vivian's father asking Sterling for 30 days, the declined card, the postponed grants, the bridge loan. The castle was not hollow, it was mortgaged. Does Vivian know? I asked. I don't know. I thought of her in our dorm, offering $30,000 like a queen, tossing coins from a balcony, fear flashing in her eyes when I asked who would pay. She knows enough, I said. The review over the anonymous file happened the next morning. Professor Marlowe sat at the head of a small conference table. A representative from IT was there, along with Carla Mendoza, another clinic student named Priya assigned to advise me, Mason, Vivian, and a student conduct officer. Mason looked furious, Vivian looked calm, which meant she had prepared a performance. Professor Marlowe began. We are here to address a file sent anonymously to Ms. Bennett that appears to combine materials from ClearPath and ReadPath. Ms. Bennett reported the file upon receipt. IT has reviewed the metadata available. Mason leaned forward. This is ridiculous, she could have made it herself. I said nothing. Priya touched her pen to her notepad. A silent reminder, Vivian sighed. No one wants to accuse Nora unfairly, but the similarities between her project and ReadPath are concerning. Professor Marlowe looked at her. Ms. Bennett reported the file before any complaint was made. Reporting first doesn't prove innocence. No, Professor Marlowe said. Metadata helps. The IT representative cleared his throat. He was a thin man with kind eyes and the weary posture of someone who had seen too many students lie badly. The file was created using a licensed copy of Excel registered to an account associated with ReadPath Ventures, he said. It was modified on a device that has logged into the campus network under Mr. Reed's credentials multiple times. Mason's face went white. Vivian turned to him slowly. He stared at the table. I didn't send it. But you created it, Professor Marlowe asked. I was comparing models. Why anonymously send Ms. Bennett a file comparing models? I didn't send it. Who had access? He did not answer. Vivian's calm cracked. Mason? He looked at her then and something passed between them that made the whole room understand. This had been his idea, but maybe not only his. Professor Marlowe removed her glasses. Mr. Reed, MS Cross, the venture program takes retaliation seriously. It also takes false allegations seriously. ReadPath's participation is suspended pending a full conduct review. Suspended? Mason flinched. Vivian's lips parted. Not disqualified yet, not ruined, but the path narrowed. After the meeting, Mason followed me into the hall. Nora, wait. Priya stopped beside me. You don't need to engage. I know. Mason's face twisted. I didn't send it. Did you create it? He said nothing. That's enough. Vivian emerged behind him. For once, she did not look like a queen. She looked like a 22-year-old woman who had just realized the man she chose as a ladder might be sawing through both sides. Mason, she said, voice shaking. Tell me you didn't. He turned on her. Don't act like you weren't pushing me to solve this. I told you to negotiate. You told me we couldn't lose. People in the hallway slowed. Vivian saw them watching and snapped her mouth shut. There it was again, appearance over truth. Even while truth burned through the curtains, I walked away. Eli was outside the building, not near the door, not waiting in a way that trapped me, just there, under the bare branches of a maple tree, holding 2 coffees. I approached before I could overthink it. Is one of those for me? One is an apology coffee. The other is a backup apology coffee in case I chose wrong. What did you choose? Tea. I took it. Our fingers brushed. It was nothing. It felt like a door opening in a quiet house. How did it go? He asked. ReadPath is suspended. He absorbed that. How do you feel? I looked back at the building. Mason and Vivian stood inside the glass doors, not touching, not speaking. 2 ambitious people tied together by debt, fear, and a story they could no longer fully control. I feel sorry for them, I said. Eli nodded. And angry. That makes sense. And relieved. That does. Too. I looked at him. I still don't trust you completely. I know. But I might want to try. The way he looked at me then was so gentle I almost had to look away. I can work with try, he said. For the first time in both my lives, romance did not feel like falling. It felt like choosing where to place my next step. Vivian Cross broke in the women's restroom during the winter donor gala. Not cried, not collapsed, broke. There was a difference. The gala was held in Hayes Hall, which made the whole night feel like a test I had not studied for. Crystal lights, white flowers, donors in dark suits, students chosen to circulate like proof that generosity worked. ClearPath had been selected for a short social impact showcase, which meant I wore my navy dress again, this time with shoes June insisted made me look financially literate but emotionally dangerous. Redpath was absent from the program Mason attended anyway, so did Vivian. They arrived together. But the space between them was visible. Mason's suit fit badly at the shoulders, as if he had lost weight. Vivian wore emerald green and diamonds I suspected were rented. She smiled for photos with the discipline of someone holding a wall upright with both hands. I gave my presentation early. It went well, not perfect. Well, I explained personal guarantees in plain English. I showed how a student could compare repayment scenarios before signing. I told the room that financial access without financial clarity was not empowerment. It was risk with better branding. That line earned applause. Mrs. Alvarez cried, though she denied it later and blamed allergies. Professor Marlowe nodded once, which felt like winning a small international prize. Eli stood near the back, not clapping too loudly, not making the moment about him. His mother stood beside him. Miriam Hayes was elegant in a way Vivian tried to be, silver hair, black dress, no visible effort. After the presentation, she approached me with Eli a careful step behind. Nora Bennett, she said, I've heard about ClearPath. I glanced at Eli. He lifted both hands slightly. Innocent. From Professor Marlowe, Miriam added. And from Mrs. Alvarez, who terrifies 3 members of our scholarship committee. She should. I said before I could stop myself. Miriam smiled. I agree. She asked sharp questions. How would ClearPath handle state-specific loan differences? Would I partner with financial aid offices? Could the tool avoid steering students toward decisions without proper licensing? Real questions, not donor compliments. I answered as well as I could. When she left, Eli looked at me. You survived. I like her. Most people do after the first mild fear. She knows you didn't tell me who you were. His mouth tightened. Yes. Did she yell? She said, disappointment in a quiet voice. Worse. I laughed. Then I saw Vivian disappear down a side hallway with one hand pressed to her stomach. Something about her face made me follow. I told myself I was going to the restroom. That was partly true. The restroom was empty except for Vivian, who stood gripping the marble counter with both hands. Her reflection stared back at her, wide-eyed and furious. A phone lay near the sink, screen lit with missed calls. Charles Cross, Sterling Private Bank, dentist's office. Mason Reed. She saw me in the mirror. For a second, pride tried to gather itself. It failed. Don't, she said. I didn't say anything. You're thinking it. Probably. She laughed once, sharp and ugly. Enjoying the view. No. That made her turn. I meant it. Seeing Vivian humiliated should have felt satisfying in small flashes. It did. I was not wholly. Part of me remembered every polished insult and wanted the universe to itemize them. But the woman in front of me looked terrified in a way I knew too well. Debt fear had a smell, metal, sweat, old panic. Vivian picked up her phone, then set it down again. Sterling is calling the cross line. The words came out flat. I understood enough. The family credit line. She looked at me with bitter amusement. Look at you. Scholarship girl speaks private banking. Scholarship girls read documents. The old Vivian would have struck back. This one leaned against the counter. My great-grandfather built Cross Development, she said. My grandfather expanded it. My father inherited buildings with roofs older than most Westridge professors. Everyone thinks that means money. It means taxes, repairs, loans, tenants, lawsuits, and relatives who think selling anything is treason. I stayed by the door. She kept talking, maybe because stopping would make the calls real. Sterling has been extending us for years. My father kept saying one more refinance, one more property sale, one more donor cycle. Then rates changed, a hotel deal failed. My mother's trust was already pledged. The foundation dinner was supposed to reassure people. And Mason, her mouth twisted. Mason was supposed to win. There it was, not Mason the man, Mason the exit. Did you love him? I asked. Vivian's eyes flashed. Did you? The question hit harder than I expected. Yes, I said. She looked away first. I liked how he looked at me, she said after a moment. Like I was the door to a life he deserved. Men from my world look at me like I'm furniture they might inherit. It was not love, it was not nothing. Mason looked at me like that too, I said. Not rich but necessary. Vivian's throat moved. For the first time, I saw the strange mirror between us. 2 girls with different bank balances, both foolish enough at some point to mistake being needed for being chosen. I knew he still loved you, she said. The words landed softly, which made them worse. No, I said. He still needed me. Vivian looked at herself in the mirror. Maybe he doesn't know the difference. Do you? She did not answer. Her phone buzzed again. Mason, she declined. Then she looked at me. We owe Cavalier $206,000 with fees if the note accelerates. My breath caught. The number had grown faster than in my first life. Both of you. Yes. Vivian. Don't say it. What? That I should have read before signing, that I should have hired counsel, that I should have known better. I thought of my first life. I was going to say I'm sorry. She stared at me like the words were in a foreign language. Then her face crumpled. It was quiet, no dramatic sobbing, just one hand over her mouth, shoulders shaking while tears cut through makeup she had probably spent an hour perfecting. I did not hug her. We were not friends, but I took paper towels from the dispenser and set them beside her. She laughed through tears. You're annoyingly decent. I'm not as decent as you think. Good, that would be unbearable. For a moment we were almost human together. Then the door opened and Paige walked in. She froze at the sight of Vivian crying and me standing near the counter. What happened? Vivian straightened with visible effort. Nothing. There it was again, nothing, the most expensive lie in the English language. I left them there in the hallway. Eli was waiting near a portrait of some dead Hayes ancestor. He took one look at my face. Vivian, her family's credit line is being called. He closed his eyes briefly. You knew? I knew Hayes Capital passed on cross-exposure. I didn't know Sterling's timing. She and Mason owe Cavalier over $200,000 if the note accelerates. Eli's expression hardened, not with judgment but concern. That lender moves fast when repayment sources weaken. Can they do that? Depends on the covenants. If the note ties repayment to prize eligibility or third-party investment commitments, Reed Patha's suspension may trigger review. I leaned against the wall. By graduation, they were buried in debt. The title of my second life had been written in my bones before I knew the words. But standing there, I felt no triumph, only the heavy sadness of watching people reach the consequences they had mistaken for shortcuts. Mason found me near the coat check. 20 minutes later, his eyes were red. Did Vivian talk to you? Yes. What did she say? Ask her. He laughed bitterly. Now you respect privacy. I looked at him, careful. He flinched. The old Mason might have fought. This Mason looked too tired. I didn't know how bad it was, he said, with everything. You didn't ask because the answer might slow you down. He stared at me. Then very quietly he said, I miss when you were on my side. My chest ached. I was never supposed to be the side you hid behind. He looked down. I loved you, he said. For months I had imagined that sentence in my first life. I had begged for it long after it stopped meaning anything useful. Now it came late, bruised, tangled with debt and regret. I know, I said. His head lifted. And I loved you, I continued. But love didn't make us good for each other. Sometimes it just made me easier to use. He looked like he wanted to deny it. He didn't. Behind him, Vivian emerged from the hallway. Makeup repaired, chin high. She saw us and stopped. Mason turned. For a moment, all three of you stood beneath the gala lights, trapped in the wreckage of choices none of us could fully blame on anyone else. Then Vivian walked to Mason. We need to talk, she said. He nodded. They left together, not hand in hand, not apart, just together, because debt is also a kind of relationship. Eli came to stand beside me. Do you want to leave? He asked. Yes. Outside, snow had started falling. He walked me back across campus without trying to fill the silence. Near my dorm I stopped. I was in debt before, I said. The words came out before fear could stop them. Eli turned to me. Before? I looked at the snow gathering on his coat. It's hard to explain. I can listen without understanding everything. That was exactly the kind of sentence a person could fall in love with if she was not careful, so I was careful. I signed for Mason once, I said. In another version of my life it ruined me. He did not ask if I meant metaphorically. Maybe he should have. Maybe some part of him understood that grief often tells the truth sideways. I'm sorry, he said. I'm not telling you so you'll feel sorry for me. I know. I'm telling you because sometimes I know what's coming and I still feel awful watching it happen. Eli stepped closer. Slowly enough that I could step back. I didn't. Feeling awful means you're still you, he said. Letting it happen means you finally know they're not you. Snow fell. Between us, he did not kiss me. I wanted him to. He didn't because he knew I had opened a wound, not a door. That restraint felt warmer than any touch Mason had ever used to claim me. Mason accused me of sabotage 3 weeks before spring break. The email arrived at 8:04 on a Monday morning. Copied to Professor Marlowe, Student Conduct, the Venture Program Director, Carla Mendoza, Vivian, and me. Subject, formal complaint regarding unauthorized access and business interference. I read the subject line once, then again, and felt my body go calm in the way it had learned to do when danger wore paperwork. June was brushing her teeth at the sink in our dorm room. I must have made some sound because she turned with foam around her mouth. What? I handed her the laptop. She read the first paragraph, spat into the sink and said, I hope he steps on a charger. Mason's complaint alleged that I had accessed ReadPath files without authorization, used confidential business information to build ClearPath, made damaging statements to potential funders, and interfered with ReadPath's financing relationships. He attached screenshots of old shared folders, fragments of messages, and one text from me after Founder Night. "You made your choice. I hope you understand what it costs." I remembered sending it. I had been angry, careful, but angry. On a screen stripped of context, it looked like a threat. My first reaction was fear, my second was exhaustion, my third was almost admiration. Mason had always known how to find the one loose thread. By 9, I was in Carla Mendoza's office with Priya, Professor Marlowe on speaker, and a printed copy of the complaint between us. Carla read quietly, making notes in the margins. "This is serious," she said. "I know. Serious does not mean strong." That helped. Priya organized the response categories on the whiteboard: access authorization, authorship timeline, communications, alleged interference, damages. "Do not contact Mason," Carla said. "I won't. Do not contact Vivian." "I won't. Do not explain yourself socially." I looked at June, who had insisted on coming and was vibrating with unsent insults. June raised both hands. "I am a sealed vault." Carla looked unconvinced. Professor Marlowe's voice came through the speaker. "Ms. Bennett, the conduct office will likely schedule a preliminary meeting within the week. Because ReadPath is already under review, they may consolidate issues. Could I be suspended?" I asked. The room got quiet. Carla answered. "Theoretically, interim measures exist. But based on what I've seen, that seems unlikely unless they believe you present ongoing risk. We will respond with documentation." Documentation, my old enemy, my new spine. We built the response over 4 days. Every old shared folder had access logs showing Mason had invited me months before the breakup. Every ClearPath file had creation dates after my withdrawal notice, with different purpose, audience, and structure. My comments about ReadPath to university officials were made informal. Review settings: I had not contacted Cavalier, Sterling, Cross donors, or outside investors. The only people I had warned were myself and the institutions responsible for rules Mason had agreed to follow. Eli stayed away from the case. He texted once. "Eli, I heard there's a conduct complaint. I won't ask details. I'm here if you need a walk, coffee, or silence." I stared at the message for a long time, then I wrote, "Silence later, coffee now." He arrived outside the library with tea, because by then he knew me better than I had intended. We walked the long path behind the chapel where fewer people could stare. "I can't talk about details," I said. "I know. He's using a text I sent." "Okay. I did write it." "Okay. It sounds bad, Nora." I stopped. Eli faced me. "One bad sentence does not erase a record of careful behavior." I wanted to believe that, in real life, people did not get judged only by truth, they got judged by what could be framed, forwarded, quoted. Women especially learned that anger was evidence against them, even when anger was the most reasonable thing in the room. "What if they believe him?" I asked. "Then you appeal." "What if the appeal fails?" "Then we find the next step." "We?" His face went still. I had not meant to say it that way, or maybe I had. He answered carefully, "If you want me there." I looked at him, this man born into a name carved above doorways, trying so hard not to crowd me with it. He had made mistakes. He would make more, so would I. "I want you there," I said. "Not in the case, just there." His eyes softened. "Then I'm there." The preliminary conduct meeting happened Friday afternoon. Mason arrived with a private attorney. That was Vivian's money, I guessed, or whatever remained of it. Vivian came too, wearing cream again. Her face was composed, but there were shadows under her makeup. She did not look at me. I attended with Carla and Priya. The conduct officer, Dean Wallace, explained that this was not a court proceeding. The purpose was to determine whether there was enough basis for formal disciplinary charges and how to coordinate with the venture program review. Mason's attorney spoke first. He used phrases like pattern of retaliatory conduct, reputational harm, and unauthorized derivative work. He made me sound obsessive. He made Mason sound naive. He made Vivian sound like an innocent investor caught in emotional crossfire. Carla took notes with an expression so calm it was almost luxurious. Then she spoke. She did not call Mason a liar. She did not call Vivian manipulative. She built a timeline. March, Nora creates original financial assumptions for ReadPath at Mason's request. April through August, Mason repeatedly seeks revisions. September, Mason publicly announces Vivian as partner. Nora withdraws consent for use of name, credit, signature, and work. September, unauthorized credit inquiry appears. October, venture program places model under attribution review. November, anonymous file created under ReadPath associated. License is sent to Nora. Nora reports it before any complaint. December, ReadPath suspended pending review. January, Mason files complaint after financing pressure increases. The room felt different when she finished, not dramatic, just clearer. Dean Wallace asked Mason when he first believed I had accessed ReadPath files without authorization. Mason glanced at his attorney. After ClearPath was accepted, he said, "Do you have evidence of access after Ms. Bennett's withdrawal notice? I know what her work looks like." "That is not what I asked." His face reddened. Vivian looked down. Dean Wallace asked whether ReadPath had used any of my work after I revoked permission. Mason said, "We rebuilt the model." Carla slid forward a comparison report. "Then you won't mind explaining these identical assumptions, including a typo in the retention notes?" Mason stared at the page. The typo was mine. I had written retention at 3 in the morning in April and fixed it later in my own copy. Mason had used an exported version from before the correction, a stupid little mistake, a perfect fingerprint. For the first time in the meeting, Vivian looked at him with undisguised anger. Not because he had wronged me, because he had been sloppy. Dean Wallace ended the meeting by saying the university would consolidate the complaint with the existing ReadPath review. No interim action would be taken against me. All parties were instructed not to contact one another about the matter. Outside, my knees almost gave out. Carla touched my elbow. "Breathe." I did. Mason stood across the hallway with his attorney. He looked young again, young and cornered. Vivian walked away from him without a word. That was new. He watched her go, then looked at me. For a second I saw hatred in his face. Then it collapsed into something worse, need. I turned away before it could reach me. Eli was outside, sitting on a bench under a bare tree, reading a book he clearly had not absorbed. He stood when he saw me. I walked straight into his arms. He froze for half a second, then held me carefully, as if I were both strong and breakable. I cried then, not loudly, not beautifully, just enough that the pressure inside me finally had somewhere to go. Eli did not tell me it was over. It wasn't. He did not tell me I was safe. Safety was complicated. He only said, "I've got you." For once, being held did not feel like being owned. It felt like rest. The final hearing took place in April. On a morning so bright it felt rude, sunlight poured through the tall windows of the administration building. Outside, magnolia trees were blooming pink and white. Students crossed the quad in light jackets, complaining about finals and acting as if the world was ordinary. Inside conference room B, 4 people's futures sat in labeled folders: mine, Mason's, Vivian's, ReadPath's. The panel included Dean Wallace, Professor Marlowe, a faculty member from the law school, and an administrator from the venture program. Carla sat beside me. Priya sat on my other side with a binder so organized it deserved its own scholarship. Mason sat across from us with his attorney. Vivian sat beside him, but not close. I noticed that immediately. They were still linked by the case, the company, and the loan, but whatever romance had carried them into the fire had burned down to obligation. The hearing lasted 4 hours. It was not cinematic. No one screamed, no one confessed into a microphone, no hidden video played on a giant screen while the room gasped. Real accountability was slower and more uncomfortable. It sounded like Dean Wallace asking, "Mr. Reed, why did your competition submission list Ms. Cross as co-strategy lead but omit Ms. Bennett's financial modeling role?" It sounded like Mason saying, "At the time I believed informal help didn't require attribution." It sounded like Professor Marlowe replying, "Even after you described Ms. Bennett's model as essential in writing." It sounded like paper sliding across a table. They reviewed the version history. They reviewed the unauthorized credit inquiry. They reviewed the guarantor draft with my name in the file title. They reviewed Mason's written assurance that I was not part of financing. They reviewed the anonymous ClearPath file created under ReadPath's license. They reviewed the complaint accusing me of unauthorized access and compared it with access logs. Each fact was small. Together, they became a wall. Vivian's part was more complicated. She had not built the model. She had not created the anonymous file. At least IT could not prove she had. She had presented herself and her family as a likely funding source during advisor meetings. She had allowed Mason to imply cross-backing was more secure than it was. She had pushed ReadPath forward while knowing her family's liquidity was strained. Was that fraud? The university panel would not decide that. They were clear about the limits. Was it misleading in a student venture competition? Yes. Vivian listened with her hands folded. When asked whether she had disclosed the uncertainty around cross-funding, she said, no. Her attorney was not there. Maybe she could no longer afford one. Maybe she had decided not to fight that part. Professor Marlowe asked, "Why not?" Vivian looked down at her hands. For the first time since I had known her, she answered without polish, "Because if I said it out loud, everyone would know we were not what we used to be." The room went quiet. I believed her. That did not save her. Mason turned toward her with a wounded expression, as if her truth had betrayed him more deeply than her lies. I wanted to shake him. He had loved the illusion until the bill arrived. When it was my turn to speak, Carla asked if I wanted her to read my statement. I said no. My hand shook slightly as I unfolded the page. I contributed to ReadPath because I loved Mason and because I believed in the project, I began. Those two facts are both true. I was not forced to help. I liked being needed. At the time, I did not ask for clear agreements because I thought asking would make me seem unsupportive. Mason looked at me. I kept reading. That was my mistake, but my mistake does not give someone else the right to present my work as theirs, use my identifying information in financing discussions, or accuse me of misconduct when I tried to protect myself. My voice steadied. I am not asking this panel to punish anyone for hurting my feelings. I am asking you to enforce the rules everyone agreed to follow. If student founders can use a girlfriend's labor privately and erase it publicly, then the lesson this university teaches is that exploitation is acceptable as long as it is charming. Professor Marlowe's face did not change, but Mrs. Alvarez, who had been allowed to attend as a witness for ClearPath's educational purpose, wiped her eyes in the back row. I looked at Mason then, not the panel. Mason, I did love you, I said. I should not have had to disappear from the work to prove it. His face crumpled. For one dangerous second, my heart remembered everything. Then the second passed. The panel took 90 minutes to deliberate. During the break, Vivian found me near the vending machines. She wore a gray suit, no diamonds, no rented bracelet. Without the armor, she looked smaller but not weaker. I didn't send the file, she said. I know. She blinked. You do. I think you wanted him to scare me. I don't think you knew exactly how he'd do it. Her mouth tightened. That's not much better. No. She looked toward the conference room. I wanted you to be the villain. I know. It would have been easier. I know that too. For a moment the vending machine hummed between us. Then she said, my father is selling the Nantucket house. I had no idea what to say to that. She laughed softly at my face. I know, poor Vivian loses one of several houses. Tragic. I wasn't thinking that. Yes, you were. A little. Fair. She leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. It was my grandmother's, the only place my mother ever seemed calm. There it was, the grief under the ridiculous privilege, still grief. I'm sorry, I said. She nodded, accepting it this time. I don't think Mason loves me, she said. I looked at her. I don't think he loved you well either. No, I said. He didn't. Do you hate me? The question surprised me. I considered lying, then didn't. Sometimes. She smiled faintly. That's generous. I also understand you more than I want to. Her eyes shone, but she did not cry. Don't forgive me too quickly, she said. I don't deserve that. I wasn't planning to. For the first time Vivian's smile was real, small, sad, human. When the hearing resumed, the panel delivered its findings. ReadPath was disqualified from the Westridge Venture Prize. Mason was found responsible for misrepresentation of authorship, retaliatory conduct related to the anonymous file, and filing a complaint with material omissions. He would receive a disciplinary record notation subject to review after 1 year, be required to complete academic integrity training, and could not submit ReadPath to university-sponsored competitions using disputed materials. Vivian was found responsible for misrepresentation of funding status and failure to correct inaccurate team disclosures. Her role was recorded separately. She was placed on conduct probation through graduation. My conduct complaint was dismissed. ClearPath remained eligible. The university would not decide ownership beyond competition rules, but Mason had to sign an acknowledgement that he could not use my original financial model without written permission. No prison, no dramatic expulsion, no instant ruin, just doors closing one by one because people had tried to walk through them with lies. Outside the building, Mason asked to speak to me. Carla looked at me. Your choice. I nodded. We stood beneath a magnolia tree, petals drifted onto the path between us. Mason looked destroyed, not because of me, not only because of the hearing, because every shortcut had led him back to himself, and he did not like the company. I'm sorry, he said. I waited. He swallowed. I'm sorry I used your work. I'm sorry I let Vivian treat you like you were less than her. I'm sorry I tried to make you feel crazy for protecting yourself. The apology was late. It was also better than I expected. Thank you, I said. His eyes searched my face, looking for something I could not give. I did love you, he said. I know. I don't know when I started resenting you for helping me. That hurt. I think you resented needing help at all, I said. He looked away. Cavalier. Accelerated the note, he said. Without the prize, without cross-funding, we owe the balance after graduation unless we negotiate. There it was, the title keeping its promise. How much? With fees a little over 212,000. My breath caught, even though I knew. Vivian's family can't cover it. He laughed once. Vivian's family can't cover Vivian's family. I should not have smiled. I didn't. What will you do? Work, negotiate, maybe sell what's left of the company assets. My attorney says we can try a payment plan. Vivian wants to fight Cavalier. I don't know. The old Nora would have researched options until dawn. This Nora said. I hope you get good advice. He nodded slowly, understanding the boundary. Are you happy? He asked. I looked across the quad. Eli stood near the steps, talking with Carla. He was not watching me, though I knew he wanted to. I'm becoming honest, I said. It's better than happy some days. Mason followed my gaze. He's good to you. He tries to be. Do you love him? I looked back at Mason. That's not yours to know anymore. He flinched, then nodded. Right? For a moment, we were two people who had once known each other's worst coffee orders and childhood fears, standing on opposite sides of a life we could not repair. Then he said, Goodbye, Nora. Goodbye, Mason. He walked away. I cried after he was gone. Eli did not come over until I looked for him. That mattered. When I did, he crossed the path slowly. Can I? He asked. I nodded. He took my hand, not my waist, not my face, my hand, as if love, real love, began with asking. By graduation morning, Mason and Vivian were buried in debt. Not metaphorically, the numbers were real, 200,000 plus on the Cavalier note. After fees and default interest, credit cards Vivian had used to keep appearances alive, legal bills, consulting invoices Reedpath could not pay, a lease on a small office space Mason had signed too early because he wanted investors to believe. Momentum was inevitable. They were not ruined forever. That mattered. Debt was not death. I knew that better than anyone, but it was heavy, and it was theirs. For once, my name was nowhere underneath it. Westridge looked unreal that morning. Blue sky, white tents, folding chairs lined across the lawn, parents taking photos under banners. June's parents arrived with flowers and enough snacks to feed an army. My mother came by bus from Providence wearing her church dress and orthopedic shoes, crying. Before the ceremony even started, You look tired, she said, touching my face. I had finals. You always say that when life is chewing on you. I laughed and hugged her. In my first life, I had skipped graduation because I was too ashamed to sit near Mason and Vivian while debt collectors called my phone. My diploma had arrived by mail, bent at one corner. I had opened it at a kitchen table in an apartment I could barely afford and felt nothing. This time I walked, not because everything was perfect, because I was there to witness myself finish. ClearPath had won second place in the social impact track and, more importantly, a one-year fellowship with a nonprofit credit education lab in Boston. Not glamorous, not a billion-dollar valuation, real work with real supervision, a modest salary, and people who cared whether students understood what they signed. Professor Marlowe congratulated me by saying, Your final documentation improved. I told her I would miss her too. Mrs. Alvarez gave me a card with a handwritten note, Keep making the fine print louder. I carried it in my pocket during the ceremony. Eli graduated from law school the same weekend. His ceremony was the day before mine. I attended with June, sitting 3 rows behind Miriam Hayes, who turned around once and gave me a look that said she knew exactly who I was and had not yet decided whether that made her happy. Afterward, Miriam shook my hand. Eli says you challenge him, she said. I try to be fair. That was not what I said. Eli closed his eyes. Mother? I liked her more than was convenient. Eli had accepted a fellowship with a consumer protection organization instead of joining Hayes Capital's legal team. His grandfather was reportedly displeased. His mother was quietly proud. Eli pretended not to care about either reaction and failed. We were not engaged. We were not making promises big enough to frighten the future. We were together in a way that felt deliberately built. Coffee after clinic shifts. Walks where we sometimes talked about hard things and sometimes complained about laundry. One kiss outside the library in late April that left me smiling into my pillow like an idiot while June yelled, Finally! From across the room. Love did not erase the first life. It did not erase Mason. It did not erase what Eli had hidden. It became meaningful because we kept telling the truth after the first damage, not because no damage had happened. Before the ceremony, I saw Vivian near the edge of the lawn. She wore a simple white dress under her gown, no diamonds. Her hair was pinned back less perfectly than usual. Beside her stood her mother, a thin woman with Vivian's cheekbones and tired eyes. Charles Cross was not there. Vivian saw me and hesitated. Then she walked over. My mother, sensing history without knowing it, squeezed my arm and said, I'll find our seats. Vivian stopped in front of me. You look happy, she said. I look sleep-deprived. That too. There was a small silence then. She said, my parents are separating. I'm sorry, she nodded. My father is moving to Philadelphia for some restructuring job. My mother is staying with her sister for a while. We sold Nantucket. The last sentence trembled. I really am sorry, I said. I know. She looked across the lawn where Mason stood with his family. Mason and I broke up, I figured. We're still dealing with Cavalier together. The attorney says we may be able to settle if we sell the remaining code and agree to a payment schedule. That's good. It doesn't feel good. No, it wouldn't. She looked at me then, truly looked. I hated you, she said, I know. Not because you did anything at first, because Mason looked unfinished around you with me. He performed with you. He was Messier. I thought that meant you had power over him. I watched Mason's mother fix his graduation hood while he stood stiffly, eyes bright. His father was not there. His sister was holding flowers from a grocery store. I didn't have power, I said. I had history, Vivian absorbed. I'm sorry, she said. The words were simple, no elegant wrapping. I believed them enough. I'm sorry too, I said. For what? For enjoying parts of it. She blinked. I smiled sadly. I'm not perfect, Vivian. For some reason that made her laugh, a real laugh, soft and startled. No, she said. You're not. It was the kindest thing she had ever said to me. We did not hug. Some endings did not need borrowed intimacy. She returned to her mother. The ceremony began at 10. Names rolled across the lawn. Families cheered, caps tilted. The president gave a speech about uncertain futures that was better than expected and still too long. When Mason's name was called, applause rose from his small section. He walked across the stage with his shoulders straight. I clapped, not loudly enough. Vivian's name came later. She walked like a girl determined not to fall in shoes that hurt. Her mother cried into a tissue. I clapped for her too. Then my name, Nora Bennett. For a second, everything went silent. Inside me I stood. June screamed loud enough to alarm several donors. My mother sobbed openly. Mrs. Alvarez whistled. Professor Marlowe, seated with faculty, gave one firm nod, and Eli, standing near the back under a maple tree because law graduates apparently did not understand assigned seating, smiled at me like he had watched me cross more than a stage. I took my diploma. The paper was heavier than I remembered. After the ceremony, photos swallowed the lawn. My mother wanted every combination possible: me alone, me with June, me with June's parents, me with Mrs. Alvarez, me with Professor Marlowe, who looked deeply uncomfortable but endured it. Finally Eli approached. My mother looked him up and down. So, she said, you're the law boy. Eli, to his credit, offered his hand. Eli Hayes, it's nice to meet you, Miss Bennett. My mother shook his hand and narrowed her eyes. Do you make my daughter eat real food? I try. She ignores advice. I've noticed. Good, then you're paying attention, June whispered. He's being processed by the maternal court. Eli passed. Barely. Later, after lunch, I walked alone to the old fountain outside the Founder Night ballroom. The building was quiet now. No music, no champagne, no Mason on stage thanking another woman for my work. I stood in the place where my first life had split open. I thought grief would come. Instead, memory did. Mason at 19, asleep on a library table. Vivian in the restroom, breaking under the weight of a family. Name: Eli on the law school steps, holding tea and waiting for permission. June on our dorm floor, eating noodles while helping me rebuild my life. My younger self, desperate to be chosen, signing things she did not understand because love felt safer when it came with a task. I forgave her first. That was the part that surprised me. Not Mason, not Vivian, not even Eli. Her, the girl who stayed too long, the girl who mistook usefulness for devotion, the girl who thought boundaries were proof she did not love enough. She had been wrong. She had also been trying to survive with the tools she had. A voice behind me said, I thought I might find you here. Eli. I did not turn immediately. Is that romantic or concerning? Depends how you feel about accurate pattern recognition. I smiled. He came to stand beside me, leaving that familiar respectful space. I closed it myself, sliding my hand into his. His fingers tightened around mine. Do you ever wish you could forget? He asked. I looked at the fountain. The water caught sunlight in bright, broken pieces. No, I said. Forgetting would make it meaningless. He nodded. I don't want to be only what happened to me, I continued. But I don't want to pretend it didn't happen either. That sounds fair. I'm working on fair. You're getting good at it. I leaned my head against his shoulder. For a while we watched the water, then I saw Mason across the courtyard. He stood near the steps with one suitcase, his graduation gown folded over his arm. Vivian was beside him. They were not touching. They spoke quietly, seriously, no performance left, no audience worth impressing. Mason looked up and saw me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he nodded, not asking, not reaching, just acknowledging. I nodded back. Vivian looked too. Her expression was unreadable at first. Then she lifted one hand, barely. I lifted mine. They walked down the steps together and then separated at the path. Vivian turned toward the parking lot where her mother waited. Mason turned toward the rideshare pickup. Alone, it should have felt like victory. It felt like an ending, a real one, messy, uneven, paid for. Eli's thumb moved gently over my hand. Ready? I looked once more at the ballroom doors. In another life, I had walked out of them broken and spent years calling that love. In this one, I had walked out and built a door of my own. Yes, I said. We crossed the courtyard slowly, not toward a perfect future, toward a life where I would read before signing, ask before trusting, apologize when wrong, and never again confuse being chosen with being used. Behind us, the fountain kept running. Ahead of us, my mother was waving impatiently near the curb while June tried to fit 3 flower bouquets into one tote bag. Eli laughed under his breath. What? I asked. Your life is loud. I looked at the people waiting for me. My mother crying again, June swearing at roses, Mrs. Alvarez calling after me that she expected quarterly updates, Professor Marlowe pretending not to hover, the man beside me, imperfect and honest enough to keep trying. I squeezed Eli's hand. It is, I said. Finally.